Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Dubin. I am the host of Business Way Outside the Box, a podcast sponsored by PR Works. If you know some business or business person who does business unusually or has an unusual business, please contact our website, which appears on the screen. Today, we have an unusual business person with us who's going to talk about something that we took for granted, I think. All the knowledge we had that we should have been sharing, but never slowed down enough to get our arms around. Um, and it can be used both as creating an expertise position as well as all kinds of other promotional opportunities. So without further ado, I am going to bring on my guest, and I'm desperately fighting for the bio, which is not unusual for me. Oh, here we go. Paulette, Paulette Ensign from Tips Products Publishing Agency. She's the founder. She founded this concept, and I'll let her tell a little bit more about sort of that log cabin story of when she wrote a 16-page booklet about 110 ideas for organizing your business life, and it went gangbusters. And so, Paulette, welcome to the show, and please tell us how you stumbled into this great opportunity and how you're helping others take advantage of it as well.
It's my pleasure, and thank you so much for this invitation. I love your framework of way beyond the box. I'm typically somebody that responds to that with what box? Um, a box? At any rate, I digress for just a split second. This business that I have now is the third major career that I've had as an adult. And I have had two where I've been self-employed. My boss sometimes, she can be challenging, but that's okay. Uh, the only one that I've had paper for was I initially taught string instruments in public elementary schools. And I was a caged animal being an employee. And my boss had to really struggle, but that's okay. It all worked out. The second career was as a professional organizing consultant, productivity, not neighborhood organizing. I definitely showed up there very early in that industry, which is ideal for me being a firstborn and natural trailblazer. It's not there. Oh, great. So, as an organizer, things had done what business typically does as far as loop de loop and highs and lows and all of that. And in the early 90s, the sales cycle for my speaking and consulting work as a professional organizer got slower and slower. And I had formed these habits called eating and paying the rent. And I just wasn't up to breaking those habits. The universe always provides. Somebody walked past me with a booklet in their hand, a tips booklet, and it was on improving your business communication skills. And I said, as a former East Coaster, I was a little glib about it and definitely self confident. And I said, I could do one of those on organizing tips. I threw it in the drawer and forgot about it for 6 months. Things had not improved. I pulled it back out. I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't know anything for all intents and purposes as in marketing. I just flew by the seat of my pants. And I also didn't have two nickels to rub together. So I sat down and created a tips booklet, as you mentioned, 110 ideas for organizing your business life. The title tells you a lot of reinforcement about outside the box. I'm not going to do 101 of anything. That way I would blend in. And that's not my reason for showing up on the planet. So 110, one, to be distinctive, and two, because quite honestly, that's where I ran out of tips. So fast forward to today, and I have personally sold over 2 million copies of that content in various languages and formats without spending a penny on advertising or a post on social media.
Okay. And so I guess that begs the question, how'd you do it? And then how do you help others do it? And, you can unpack that any way that you'd like.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. How I did it, the very first year, and this is really, if the story fascinates me as much as it seems to fascinate other people as well. The first year that I was in this business, what I could see to do, given the resources and knowledge that I had at that time, was to do a very short run of printed versions of the booklet. And I ran, I think, 100 copies, which is a pretty short run. And the booklet is 4 inches by 9 inches. It fits in a number 10 envelope. What I did, and this was 1991, which is crucial to establish context here of what websites, no such thing. It just wasn't there yet. So I went to the town library, the physical library, sat there in the reference department, pulled some very thick directories off the reference shelf, and hand wrote a list of magazine editors. And because my topic was as generic as it is, I could really create quite a long list. And the reason that I started there was I sent a copy of the booklet and a cover letter to as many editors as I could, inviting them to excerpt from my booklet into an article they would write. And I didn't put any limitation on how much to excerpt, provided they put my contact information and the price of, I think it was $5 at that point. They did. That triggered a daily delivery of a tub of envelopes with $5 in each of them. And, this was like manna from heaven because I was coming out of the financial desert for all intents and purposes. And I had to find a high school kid who would help me do the stick and stuffing and data entry. I took the money out first because there was some green paper money in there. And I didn't want to put that kind of a temptation in front of a high school kid. So I'm going through the envelopes one day, $5, $5, $5, $1,000, $5. Wait a minute. This has more digits before the decimal point. You can't fool me. And at the time, I was very involved in volunteer leadership in the National Association of Professional Organizers. So I had access to all kinds of manufacturers and distributors in the office supplies, in storage, manufacturing, things like that, consumer kinds of stuff. What I didn't have was knowledge. I had never worked in a corporation, and to this day can still say that. And I didn't know the language. I didn't know the architecture. Well, when I saw this $1,000 check come in, I said, I got to call this person and find out what they think they were buying because this was a brand new experience for which I was eternally grateful. And I got the guy on the phone and he was delightful. And he said, listen, I bought one copy of your booklet because I saw it mentioned in an article in a magazine. I went, yes, it's working. Um, and he said, I like it so much and it's so well done that I'd like to use it as this year's holiday greeting to all of my personal and professional contacts. I went, well, okay. And he said, could I have my company name and phone number on the cover? Sure. I had no idea how it was going to be done, but couldn't be rocket science. Then he said, I've got a really big favor to ask you. I said, hey, listen, if I can, I'll be happy to. He said, could we leave your contact information in there? Yeah. You don't have to twist my arm for that. And I couldn't help myself but upsell him a little bit more than what he originally wanted to buy. He ended up buying 2,500 copies, and I did get sales from some of the recipients of that. And that conversation was on a Friday. He never would have met my target market list. He never would have gotten on there. Had nothing to do with organizing at all. He was an electrical manufacturer's rep firm in San Juan, Puerto Rico. However, his check cleared my checking account beautifully. And from that Friday when I spoke to him to the immediate following Monday, my business model completely changed and has been that change ever since for beyond 30 years, beyond 3 decades. So now what I teach and in many ways provide, not completely, but in many ways, provide only the model of bulk sales, in essence, wholesale purchase, or content licensing. You cannot get a single copy from me unless you are a well-vetted decision maker in a company or in an association. So that turned things on its head and really is, I mean, I wasn't going to sell 2 million copies one at a time, I assure you.
Well, so that's a great story. And so how that and that it sort of shows you both the power of PR, which is a nice thing for my
Yeah,
organization to hear.
absolutely.
It also shows the power of your ingenuity. But let me take it to the next level, which is modern times. Now that we have the internet, now that we have Amazon, how do you use these new tools to put your concept on turbo?
Well, here's the great thing about what has occurred over time. At one point, a lot of somebody started saying to me, as if it were gospel, as if it were the truth, not a question. Nobody's doing print anymore. And I decided that wasn't a battle I wanted to fight. So where my branding had been Tips booklets for quite quite a lot of this past 3 decades, I made a small brand change to Tips products because those same tips, that content really can be delivered in lots of ways, both digitally and in print and in pixels. And that typically, and you'll appreciate this given the work that you do with your clients, that typically these products are used most often as in a promotional context, whether it's gift with purchase, whether it's when you open an account in associations as a new member, gifts given away. So the decision making is on the large distributor. It's not on the end user. So that's really fantastic. Now, what you hit on as far as, with the internet, yeah, a lot more is possible depending on how you see it. I've had numerous people, I stopped counting, saying, well, can't people do this themselves? Sure, they can. And they can really make a mess of it, first of all. Second of all, they can create the product, but then what?
Right.
I have yet to meet anyone in all these years who mirrors my business as their core business. They may dabble in the bits and pieces, but I'll give you a for instance, and you know human nature, I think, as well as I do. People can screw up the easiest things. It's just amazing sometimes. I I noticed that I was creating a formula for tips writing. I noticed it in hindsight. So I looked at one day and I said, "Oh, these really do seem to be formulaic." And the formula goes like this, and I'm more than happy to share it because of what I just shared with you. You can create your own list of 52 tips, which is the magic number, by the way, that I've landed on now for quite a while. And the question becomes then what? What are you going to do with it? Oh, well, I'm going to put it on my website. Yeah. And then what are you going to do with it? Oh, I don't know. I'll just give it away. Oh, you have all the money in the world that you need right now or want, right? You like the idea of leaving money that's available to you on the table? No, but I don't know what to do. Bingo, I do. So the whole notion of the tips formula, according to Paulette Ensign, is start one sentence with a positive verb, an action word, telling the reader or listener what to do. A second sentence explains how or why. Steve, you'd be amazed at how many people will screw that up, where I'll see I mean, it's amazing. And the fact of the matter is, we each know different things than other people know, and vice versa. So I don't mean that to sound harsh. It is fascinating, though, has no bearing on intelligence at all, none. when I get a manuscript that has about 12 consecutive uses of the word don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing. What do you want to suggest that somebody does? Here you are at a point in the year where lots of folks are looking at wanting to be healthier, more fit, drop some weight, whatever. And that's an industry that has been around for however long it's been around, a long time. And anyone who's had challenges maintaining a healthy weight, they know what to eat and what not to eat. If you have a whole list of don't do this, don't do that, you're going to leave them eating dirt. So, what do you want them to eat? What do you want to suggest? Because that's a whole lot, it lands much better on the recipient of that information. I'd like to give you a couple of really quick examples of tips, if that's okay.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, because it makes it more real. And the issue of that many people ask themselves and or me, gee, I don't know if my information is valuable or not. Yeah, it is. And I'm going to tell you in a moment the values that it really does provide. So here's a sample tip from my days as a professional organizer. Take the biggest thing out of a pile first. It instantly shrinks the pile and motivates you to keep going. Now, that is neither rocket science nor the cure to cancer. However, you'd be amazed how many people just never thought of it. And it applies in a lot of different environments. In the old days when the Sears catalog, that big fat printed thing, take that out of a pile and boom, you got, a whole lot smaller pile. The laundry's just been done and it comes out of the dryer and it's sitting over on a chair because someday you'll get to folding it and putting it away. Well, if you take that big fluffy robe out of the pile or a whole set of sheets for king size bed, all of a sudden that pile gets smaller. And I've been amazed at how many of my friends and colleagues just never thought of that. To that point, I want to give one more example that's even more profound well, maybe not more profound, but more distinctly explaining how we each have different knowledge. So I was going to the county fair here in San Diego a few years ago with one of my closest friends. I happen to have very hungry clothing, meaning that pretty much anything I'm aiming for my mouth lands on whatever my top is, whatever the shirt or sweater or whatever. And this is reality. So we're at the fair and I'm working on this really great ice cream with chocolate syrup on it. And I look down and this brand new white shirt that I'm wearing for the first time is decorated in very contemporary design, let's say, with brown chocolate syrup all over my shirt. Well, my friend says, well, don't worry, white vinegar will get that out. And I looked at her like she had 12 heads. I said, what are you talking about? She said, you don't know that? You're smart. How come you don't know that? I said, being smart has nothing to do with it. And thank you. Yes, I agree. I am smart. However, if you put the top 1,000 descriptors of my mother on a list, nowhere would have even the most remote reference to cleaning skills. How could she teach me something she didn't know? Now, that same friend of mine, she eats at least one meal of statistics a day. Me, I fly by the seat of my pants with certain things. I don't care about the statistics. Once in a while, it's useful, yes, but I'm not as drawn to consuming that the way she is. And there's a glowing example of where what each of us has really is different and yet no less valuable. And before we go on to the next question you might have, I promised to share what I view as not only that I view it, but that this has been borne out multiple times, the value of those tips that you might be undervaluing in your own assessment. The information is either brand new information, you might never have thought about take the biggest thing out of the pile. It might be information you knew and forgot because you just had no use for it, so kind of went way back in the archives in your hard drive between your ears. or it's confirmation that an expert just confirmed something you already knew, and aren't you a hot shot? Any one of those three things really points to the value of what you might be taking for granted in the way of your knowledge base.
Okay.
So,
And tell me, what are some of the ranges of the kind of folks who work with you? I'm sure that a lot of them are, subject experts who are consultants, but there's probably a wider range than just the brainiac who has a service industry.
yes, you are completely correct about that. And it goes a very wide range. Um, it's consultants, it's speakers, it's executives. It can be executives in nonprofit. It can be executives in for-profit companies, any of that. And typically people are thinking that only authoring a book is what will bring you credibility. Without sounding immodest, I think having sold over 2 million copies of one publication gained me some credibility. And I have not been an author of a book. So that kind of thing. Um, Typically it's more often than not people over 50 and older, just due to their life experience. That doesn't mean that's where the line of demarcation is, but typically those are the folks that have the knowledge, have the motivation, have the bucks, the money, and have a drive to put something out there, something out there. The other thing too is that I don't have more men or women as clients, or transgenders, or any other gender as who comes to me, because we have such a good time, and that gets out. That gets out in the world, that not only are you going to get this result, but the process is, Paulette's a hoot and a half.
Well, so in brief, tell me, how people do work with you. What is the process?
Yeah, the process starts with creating the 52 tip manuscript, no matter what else you do. And that is the starting point, where either the client does a draft based on my direction, or they have some things in print already, in rather than audio, but we can certainly transcribe um, an audio file, so that we've got the written word to be able to take the tips out of that. Either way, the manuscript is the cornerstone. The 52 tip manuscript is the cornerstone. We then have various packages that we will provide either for a solo author to have that be their booklet. We've also got some groupings. We've got, and here's my musical background that whimsically surfaced when I had a redo of what these packages are. We've got the prelude, which is the manuscript. Then we've got the soloist, which is the rest of that manuscript, where we provide printed copies. We have a lot more education as far as how do you reach those bulk sales um, candidates and licensees. We've also got a quartet of 4 people. And then we've also got, and this was something that I created years ago, the booklet version of the anthology books that became so popular.
Hmm.
So where there's 14 people who are in a booklet, each one has one page, and whoever has been the sponsor, the joint venture partner with me, gets all of the same thing that the paid participants get. And there's a revenue share and just some really, really fun stuff. It's less expensive in time and dollars to do a booklet than it is to start with a book. And that very often when you got a tips booklet, it serves so many different purposes before, during, and after your book is done. So if somebody's got a book now and they're thinking in terms of, well, yeah, these tips sound nice, but, or they're saying someday I'll write a book, which they may or may not, or I'm in the throes of writing the book already. This is something that I have recently added to my business of ways to accelerate and expand your Amazon book sales before, during, and after your book is done. And I've been creating some classes around that. So that can also be an entry point of, gee, is this information really as interesting as it sounds? Well, we've got a very modest fee for the tuition of those places to stick your toe in the water and have some results that are saleable.
Okay. Well, we are coming to the close here. What's the best way for folks to reach you to talk about possible next steps?
Yeah, it's tipsproducts.com is
Okay.
my website. And that's S is on the end of each of those words. That's all together. Tipsproducts.com. Don't lose your S along the way.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure spending time with you, and I look forward to referring some of our clients to you and leaving the door open so we can talk again.
I look forward to that, Steve. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.